My name is Marcus Kinney. I am the strength and conditioning coordinator for the Grand Rapids Griffins, and I kind of coordinate actions that happen here and outside of this weight room with the rest of our staff. I went active duty in the U.S. Army in June of 1985. I had enlisted on a 4-year commitment. I wasn't quite ready for college yet, so I signed up for the GI Bill, trying to see if I wanted to make the military a career or get back out and use my college fund. I went into a communications job, so I was trained in communications in the military, and with that I was always assigned to military intelligence units. So I kind of had a high-level security clearance, work with military intelligence units, communicating messages and such. But the best thing about that, the job that I took with the military, was I went airborne. I became a paratrooper. The biggest thrill that I did in my life with clothes on was jumping out of an airplane, anywhere between 750 feet to 1,000 feet. So that was the best part about it. I was in from 85 to 90. I did 2 tours at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. And then in 1988, the United States Army felt the need to send me over to Korea for a year during that Olympic year. And that's about the gist of my military service. The first 2 years were great. It was a blast. I loved it. Being somebody who read a lot of military history, it was fun to kind of live that life and understand some of those things. After the first 2 years of my military commitment, I kind of looked up at the sky and I was like, Lord, let me get out of this in one piece. I'll go back to school, get my education, I'll be good, I promise. I was able to get out in one piece, and I went back to school, finished my education up through a master's degree, and I've been doing my best to live that good life ever since I got out in pretty much one piece. So when I got out of the military in the beginning of January 1990, it was kind of a challenge. I'd spent the past 4+ years of my life immersed in a culture where you look out for somebody else and you're secondary to the needs of everybody else. So becoming back into the real world and becoming a civilian again, I somewhat struggled with that concept of me looking out for me. I was not attached to a unit. I was not attached to a team. I was missing that esprit de corps that we worked on getting in the military so hard. So as I went through my education, I ended up in athletic training, sports medicine as an undergrad. And then as I shifted into my master's work, it was a master's in athletic coaching education with the emphasis on strength conditioning at West Virginia University. So as I moved back into athletics, it was almost a perfect fit for me in the military because, again, you work on building those team bonds, that esprit de corps. Somebody else has got to come before you for everyone to be successful. So in a roundabout way, it was kind of funny. I wanted to get out of the military and get back into school because I wanted to be a husband and a father. And then again, so I get into coaching. Well, you have the same time constraints almost, minus weapons being fired at you. But it's a little safer being a coach and working with teams, but that bond, that esprit de corps, that fulfillment I have, that working within a group and working for a group, and it all came back when I got back into working with athletics and working with different teams. So that made a whole piece of me again. Once again, after getting out of the military, and when I was working on my master's degree as a graduate assistant at West Virginia University. This is actually kind of funny. So the first full-time job that I was able to acquire after I graduated with my master's degree from West Virginia was I was a full-time assistant strength conditioning coach at the United States Naval Academy. So my first job as a strength coach, I spent 2 years working at Navy, as in the Army-Navy game. Had a lot of great fun with those people, young men and women, those self-starting people that want to do that. We'd always throw barbs back and forth again because that's what Army-Navy does. So as the Navy kids would tell me, they were like, "See how it is, Coach? You can get out of the Army, get an education, and come work for the Navy." To which I usually replied, "Get over there, squid boy or girl, and commence to lifting those heavy weights like I told you a minute ago." But it was great. It was great ribbing and it was great fun. One of the craziest things that came out, I don't even want to call it crazy, but it was one of the greatest things. A bucket list thing I always had in my life was wanting to attend an Army-Navy football game because it's just great pomp and circumstance and pageantry and the history of that. So I worked at the Naval Academy. I was able to achieve that first Army-Navy game. I was able to attend the games in '98, which we lost, and then in '99, which Navy we won. The crazy thing, it was a great thing. It's a fierce rivalry. You'll see in football especially, but in all the sports that involve that game, those athletes will try to beat the tar out of each other. They want to win so bad to hold those bragging rights that Navy beat Army or Army beat Navy. But when that contest is done, like with the Army-Navy football game, when that game was finished, you would see grown men from the Army side and the Navy side hugging each other and crying. And you would see guys playing their last game telling another dude, looking him dead straight in the eye, tears rolling down his face. Man, when we get out there in that world, if you ever need me, my brother, all you got to do is call, and you know I will be there to help you. And it didn't matter that branch thing, that Army and Navy thing, because you were brothers in the struggle, brothers in arms, brothers working together for the benefit of this country. So it was always a bring a tear to your eye moment that those forces were always able to link up to each other and see beyond that moment. But they always had one thing great in common, though. Again, Army-Navy is a fierce rivalry. They don't like each other on the field. They like each other off the field. They jibber-jabber and talk to each other and love each other. But the one thing they both have in common is neither side can stand Air Force. So after I spent a couple years at Navy, then from there I was able to be hired at Kansas State for a few years, was there for a few years, and ended back at my alma mater at West Virginia, worked there for a few years. Then went to another school, University of Tulsa, so I followed opportunities around. Eventually, I decided to go back into school to work on a PhD, so I ended back up at West Virginia as a teaching assistant. And then a friend of mine, former coworker, now business partner, was wanting to start a strength conditioning company. So as I finished off my coursework, I went to work for him, which brought me to Michigan. And so we had a couple of training centers here in town. During the summer of 2012, I had the opportunity of working with Luke Glendenning, Mike Knuble, and then a guy from Michigan named Chris Summers. So that's how I started my hockey career, working with those guys that summer. The 2012-13 season, after the strike was settled, Luke Glendenning came up from Toledo to come to Grand Rapids. Grand Rapids didn't have a strength coach. He talked with Jeff Blashill. Hey, Blash, there's a guy that worked with me and Knuble over the summer. He seems pretty decent. Can we get him in here? So they called me, and they brought me in January of 2013. We had an interview, and I guess I said the right things and presented myself well enough that they felt they would take a chance on me. And as Blash told me, he offered me the opportunity. He goes, hey, all I can promise you is this season. We have to get through this season. I can't promise you or guarantee you anything beyond this season. Are you willing to come take this chance? And like anybody else with, I think, worth your salt, if you're giving an opportunity to prove yourself and it's something that you want to go get, you take that opportunity to prove yourself. I did the best that I could with having limited knowledge of hockey. However, I know a lot about my profession which helped. At the end of the season, things went really well. The Griffins won the Calder Cup that year for the first time. The exit interviews went nice, I suppose, because at the end of that, Jeff Blashill asked me if I wanted to come back for the following season. And of course, I said yes, and I've been here ever since with no desire to quite actually leave this place. I love my responsibilities here with the Griffins. To me, it fits in perfectly with what I used to do in college. It's the same age group of young men, anywhere between 18 to 22 or 23, 19 at that age group. Now we have a few guys that are veterans that you have to work with. They're a little bit different. It's a different animal, but I know how to handle that as well. But the big piece of that with me is working with the youth. I've been so familiar with that in college, and it just transitions right well into here. I think that's been a big benefit to the Griffins as well as to the Red Wings organization, to stay down here and work with those young men. Some of the most rewarding things, there's a couple of things that are really rewarding about working with this job down here at this level. First and foremost, of course, is when you get a prospect and you do all the right things with the prospect in combination with all of our coaches, and that prospect becomes a Red Wing. That is always the best thing. That's always what our goal is. So that always makes me happy when a Griffin gets his Red Wings. The next best thing about this position is when we get one of our guys that are injured, no matter what the injury is, and you work on trying to keep him sharp so that when he gets back on the ice, he doesn't miss a beat. We've had some great opportunities with that. I think most recently was working with Carter Mazer. The team, we all did a fantastic job between the coaches on the ice, off the ice, working with all the staff here and the athletic trainers and the PT to make sure that Carter stayed in the best shape that he possibly could to get him back on the ice. And talked with him yesterday after his game, Wednesday in Cleveland. Carter, how did you feel? He goes, it couldn't have been any better than what it was except for possibly scoring a goal or two. But he felt that he was in a good spot to build on. He didn't feel that he was a step behind or lacking. His big component is just now getting used to being on the ice and working with new line mates and teammates. So that's always a benefit to get a young man back from injury, back to the ice, to have them feel that they didn't miss a beat and they're just about picking up where they left off. Those are, for me, the two most rewarding things about this job. Seeing guys get called up and make an NHL career, or getting your injured men back on the ice to play without having them feeling that they missed a beat, they haven't lost a step. One of the big things that I feel that military translates into hockey is, and it's a small thing, but it's a big thing. It's paying attention to details, trying to understand the difference of the smallest minutia. That's going to make the difference in whether you succeed in what you're trying to do, or in our case out in the field, if you're in battle, whether you live or die. You have to pay attention to the smallest detail, number one. Be very observant of everything around you and understand what is trying to go on at all point in times around you in any environment. That translates well in sports, into the military, and even to life in general. That is always a big, huge thing. Also, is discipline. If you don't have the discipline to get yourself started on time, to focus on those small details, to do those small detail things that drive you crazy because it's the minutia of that same repetitive motion over and over again, but that's the thing that leads you to your success, is having that discipline to detail and working on it. So you have to be disciplined. And another big thing about that is you have to have a willingness to work hard. You have to work hard. You cannot allow yourself to be tired. It goes into your head all the time. What you think is what you are. If you let that thought creep into your mind, boy, I'm tired today, then you're going to be tired. So you can't let that thought creep in. So again, it's one of the things that I try to benefit these guys. It's the same thing. Even if I am tired, I can't let them know I'm tired, because if I'm tired, then they're going to be tired. So that mindset of that discipline is absolutely huge, that attention to detail and just that relentless driving work ethic. If you work as hard as you can to be the best that you can be, at least if you don't achieve the goal that you're aiming for, you'll get to somewhere that you're supposed to be. But you got to have the discipline and the drive and the work ethic to get to where you want to go, to attempt that to begin with. If I'm going to tell you a story, then I'm going to have to go back to jump school, learning how to jump out of an airplane. Probably the father of the airborne paratroopers, General Ridgway, had a saying that said, "You show me a man who will jump out of an airplane, and I will show you a man that will fight." So the thing of jumping out of an airplane is they could teach you how to do it in one day if they really wanted to combat jump. They really could. But it's a fear that you have to face going through jumping out of that moving aircraft well above the ground. So with anything else in this life, as they talk about jumping out of an aircraft, right? You jump out of the airplane, when your parachute comes open, you jump out of the door, you got a 3 count. 1, 2, 3, your chute should open up, you look, hey, there it is. Now you work on trying to get down to the ground and guide away from everybody else. So the first jump, everything went fantastic, right? The chute opened, as they taught us, look off the ground onto an angle, because that way you don't see the ground. I mean, you get a better judgment of the ground looking off at an angle as opposed to looking straight down. First jump was textbook, just like I was taught. Second jump, I thought I was master of the domain and I knew everything there was to do. Everything worked out planned as it was supposed to. Chute open, 3 count, boom, boom. My fatal flaw in that was I decided to look straight down at the ground as I'm trying to judge how close I am to landing. So yeah, I'm trying to look straight down at the ground. I'm like, yeah, it's about 100 feet. That's about maybe, and that was the ground. So lesson on that is do as you are told by your instructors. Don't look straight down at the ground. Use that angle to try to judge how close the ground is to you. That's my craziest airborne story.